We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
Dino Ambrosi, mate, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Pumped to be here.
I really appreciate you agreeing to come on. So I saw your TED Talk, and it really had a huge impact on me. And for those listening, before we dive into the subject matter, tell us a little bit about yourself and Project Reboot.
Yeah, so on a core level, I'm just on a mission to help other people build healthier relationships with technology. That's something that I struggled with a lot when I went to university. That transition was just really difficult, and my phone and social media became my coping mechanism for stress and anxiousness, and it just spiraled me into a very unhealthy and addictive relationship with technology. So I've been working to sort that out for myself for the past 3 years, and in the process have been really trying to identify what are the main areas that we can focus on to help people change their tech habits. So this all started when I taught a semester-length class at UC Berkeley during my senior year that was all about building a healthier relationship with your phone. And since graduating, I've condensed that 12-week course into this week-long guided digital detox program called Project Reboot that I run at schools, mostly around the States, but I've done some international stuff as well. And I'm just trying to scale that up and reach more people so that I can help particularly teenagers avoid the pitfalls of unhealthy tech use in college. But I think really this is a conversation topic that's applicable to people of all ages. I mean, my grandparents spent a lot of time on Facebook. Like, it's not just teenagers, you know?
We need to keep old people off Facebook.
I know, man.
Let's start there. I feel like Facebook has become a place for like conspiracy theorists and racists just to share.
Yeah.
and just to trick old people into thinking that like the world is coming to an end.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm fortunate in the sense that I think my grandparents have stayed out of those rabbit holes on Facebook, but their Facebook page is a marvel in and of itself. Like, they don't really understand how it all works, and they're under the impression that if they see a post that asks them to share it, they're like morally obligated to share it. So they share an average of like 10 posts a day, and it's just like the craziest collection of content on the internet. So honestly, as much as I advocate for not necessarily minimizing, but being intentional about time on social media, I feel like they're an exception. And I'm okay with them spending more time because it's just entertaining to me, you know?
Yeah. No, nothing was more entertaining than my 86-year-old grandmother going live on Facebook in her nightgown, just having no idea what was going on.
I kid you not, mine has done the same exact thing multiple times.
Oh, bless their hearts. That'll be us. Like, you know, that's going to be us. We're going to be like, let us tell you about
100%.
Little John. Yeah, Busta Rhymes. And yeah, and it'll be us like, Tame Impala was awesome. And we'll be like using VR in catastrophic ways to our own detriment. But
Yep.
First things first, what is the general interest you're finding when working with teens and younger people as you present this information, as you make them aware of the negative impacts? Because looking from the outside in and having not been in the trenches like you have, my initial thought would be that most would reject the idea of detoxing from technology or putting limits on how they're using it. What have you found?
Yeah, it's definitely, there are mixed reactions to it. And it's been really interesting to learn what they respond to and what they don't over the course of the past year plus of going into high schools. Generally, I think teens know that this is a problem. And if you're spending, like the average teenager in the US is spending 8 hours, 39 minutes a day looking at a screen non-productively.
Yikes.
Nobody wants to spend that much time. Like, the amount of time that they're giving these platforms doesn't match up to the value that they're getting in return. And there was a study that Common Sense Media did back in 2016 that showed that 50% of US teens say they feel addicted to electronic devices. That was pre-COVID. I guarantee you that number is way higher right now.
Sure.
So I think that they definitely are aware that it's a problem. You just need to really be careful about how you bring it up and address it, because a lot of teens, but I think people in general, feel this element of like guilt and shame about their screen time. They're unhappy with it and they blame themselves for it. They think it's completely their fault, and they don't really want to talk about it because it's an insecurity for them. That's definitely how it was for me in college. So I think clearing the air on that and like helping them realize you're not alone. It's not your fault. It is your responsibility to like address this and build a healthier relationship. But at a core level, like these social media companies know how our brains work and we're hackable to a certain extent. So what I've really found resonates with teens is getting them to understand that they're being manipulated for profit by companies that don't have their best interests at heart. Like nobody wants to feel manipulated or coerced. I think that's why there's typically a bad response from teens about screen time. Is usually it's adults or parents that are cracking down on them and imposing rules without their consent, and they don't feel like their voice is being heard. You need to help them understand that really the people that are manipulating them are the people that are designing the platforms that they're using on a daily basis. So it's almost like you have to stoke a little bit of, I don't know if anger is the right term, but like they should feel upset about the way that social media is run right now. And I really just try to approach it in a way that encourages them to support each other in building a healthier relationship with it, and kind of destigmatizes the conversation around screen time and social media use.
Did what you just say mean that they get together and create connection and relationships? Oh, geez, when did we do that? Oh, yeah, all throughout history. You made friends and you did things with them. Like you went out with friends that you liked as opposed to waited on your phone to get likes. Something you said, and a quote of yours that I really love is, understand the value of your time and don't give it to social media companies for free. Like you said, there's this misconception that the app was free, right? It doesn't cost you anything to use it. Well, time being a resource, yes, it does. And it costs you your privacy in many ways, because they are then pointing and sending you a lot of information. The algorithm does work to trigger particular emotions in you. We saw this in Myanmar, like the whole state just collapsing because of how the algorithm pitted people against each other. So how do you approach, you say you got to navigate the shame tactfully, right? And to destigmatize, like give us an insight into what that conversation might look like for someone listening right now, if they're to have that with their kids.
Yeah, I think when you're approaching this with kids, you really want to take the stance of, I'm not a judge, I'm a guide, right? Get them to verbalize what their intentions are for using social media. So instead of telling them that they're spending too much time on it, ask them like, what value do you get out of this? Like, what are your favorite parts of Instagram or TikTok or whatever? And then ask them how much of their time that value is worth, right? So I think step one is always getting kids to really clarify what their ideal relationship with technology is. And I think there's two main concepts that they need to base that understanding around. The first is, like you're saying, you pay for social media with your time and you want to get a good deal out of it. And then second, you have a content diet that is just as important, in my eyes at least, as your nutritional diet. In the same way that food develops your body and influences your physical health, the information you're consuming on a daily basis, that develops your worldview and influences your attention span and your mental health. So really critically asking yourself, like, what content do I want to get from the internet? And recognizing that if the majority of what you're watching online is being decided by an algorithm, you don't have any agency in curating your content diet. And that's a huge missed opportunity, because you can use the internet to learn anything. So I think there's a few elements of the conversation. One big tip that I have for parents is, I call this like planting more than you prune. most parents focus on pruning away, like getting rid of all the negative aspects of tech use and like focusing on TikTok and things like that. I think it's more effective to instill a desire in your kid to leverage the positive aspects of the online world. And there are so many, right? So take a masterclass together, or encourage them to start a YouTube channel and start creating content. Like, use it to find and develop passions and share things that you're interested in, as opposed to just passively get sucked into rabbit holes that are being driven by algorithms that are just optimizing for your attention.
That's, oh man, I'm so glad we're talking. My daughter's just turning 1, and I already know that before long, I mean, already she sees a phone and just launches at it. And the initial thought is, well, why? Why that above the teddy bear? And it's like, well, because she's recognized it has our attention. And so she's like, oh, so what? So I think it's important as a parent myself, and as any parents listening, is to go, okay, well, how can I model that? How might I be, rather than you need to change your ways. It's like, someone saying you need to lose weight as they dust Dorito dust off their chest, like it's like, you got to model it, right? You got to model the change. And I see this done a lot with some great parents around curious inquiry as it pertains to emotional intelligence. Like, so kids, the great thing about them, they don't have a lot of filters. Emotions come out left and right, and inquiring into why they're feeling that way and helping them find the link to how they're feeling. And it makes me think, like, who are the positive role models that Bindi that's my daughter, can find? Is it Miss Rachel or Miss Moni in Australia? Is it a particular YouTuber? And if there's another person online that makes her feel smaller, lesser than, frustrated, help her make that link and go, well, how does that content, why do you think that makes you angry? And do you like this feeling? Watching that makes you have this feeling? Wow, then maybe you could. I found that recently with Instagram, just unfollowing people and certain things that served me when I was single and whatever. And now it's like, okay, I don't need to be seeing booty pics and all this stuff. I'm a married man, right? So like, that's gone. A lot of the angry people or whatever that I used to believe in their thoughts and no longer do, just detoxing, getting rid of it, and just keeping the Chris Williamsons and keeping the Tom Billies, right? Just the ones that are giving positive information. Back to health. You mentioned you kind of use health as a reference to look at content and how we're consuming it. So I did a little bit of digging and found that the Surgeon General of the United States said America is suffering from a public health crisis of loneliness, isolation, and lack of connection. Not only that, the UK and Japan have appointed cabinet-level positions for Minister for Loneliness. There is a Minister for Loneliness, right? And that there are staggering studies coming out and they suggest that we're at epidemic levels of stroke, heart disease, and premature death linked to isolation and loneliness. So what are you finding with the people that you're coming across? Is there a common theme, perhaps, that they may be suffering these things?
Yes, for sure. I think, there's a really interesting category of teens that I've worked with where they have really high screen time, but it's actually a lot more active than the average kid. And those are typically the ones that spend a ton of time on Discord, because it's become their medium for socializing. And I'm really of two minds about this, because
it's like Reddit and places where they can be in chat rooms and
and on the one hand, I think that is kind of great, right? One of the things that's amazing about the internet is it allows you to find people that have the same interests as you. And if you have a very niche set of interests, then you can find a community around that and you can connect with people from all over the world. But I worry sometimes that having the majority of your socializing happen online impacts your ability to socialize offline. And then I think there's also this other subset of kids that they just spend so much time scrolling through this feed where so much of the content is damaging to their self-esteem. that I think it impacts their ability and their confidence to
Yeah.
go out and put themselves in uncomfortable social situations, right? Like I remember when I was in high school, there was a lot of concern around how we were going on Instagram and we would see how many likes other kids at school were getting on their posts, and we'd compare ourselves to them.
Hell,
And now, like, Instagram is literally, it's just a never ending feed of like all the best looking, most talented, wealthiest people in all the coolest parts of the world doing all of the coolest things. And
yeah.
I just think that like constantly being exposed to that on a subconscious level kind of makes you devalue yourself. And I think that there's kind of a feedback loop to it where it keeps you coming back, because you're less likely to then like go out in the world and put yourself out there and find things offline that give you value and connect you with people. And then you come back and you feel worse about yourself. And it's just this really like damaging feedback loop, right?
It's absolutely. And I've been impacted by it. And you shared that. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 24.
24. Okay. So I'm 30. So it definitely impacted your kind of like group of grades that went through more than mine per se, because Facebook wasn't necessarily showing those numbers as much. You had to really look for them. It didn't promote someone that got more likes than the others. And MySpace was just MySpace. That's what that was. So that's interesting, because I've spoken to my niece and I've spoken to a couple and my nephews, and yeah, they have a kid at their school that otherwise, like from the former metrics of being popular were, you know, were they strong, were they good looking, were they good with girls, were they good at sport, right?
Yeah.
They may be none of those things, yet they have a Twitch or a YouTube or an Instagram following that's massive and humongous.
Yep.
And all of a sudden they've been placed higher on the social rung in the social standings. And it's those, what kind of danger? How are we setting kids up for failure when we use those as the metrics for success, as opposed to deep and meaningful relationships? You know, friends that you can tell anything, groups that have your back. What's the danger in your mind? Where do you see us heading if we continue to, or this generation keeps placing importance on those metrics being the signs for success?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty deeply concerning. I don't know. There's some really interesting conversations that I've had with neuroscientists. I TA'd for a class at UC Berkeley that was all about the science of productivity and performance. And the professor, Dr. Sahar Yusuf, she's brilliant. And we talk a lot about smartphone addiction and the impacts of that. And one of the things that she's predicting is that we're going to see the divorce rate skyrocket because the way that social media impacts our brains, both psychologically and cognitively, has been shown to make it more difficult for us to develop deep and meaningful relationships. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's scary for sure. I don't think that it's like we're doomed by any means. Like I feel like we can find ways to combat this problem, and I don't want to just like get on here and cast all of this negativity around social media. I think it is having consequences and damages. I think there are reasons to still use it. Like I still use Instagram on a daily basis. You know, I think if you can find a way to be intentional about it, it can still be a net positive. So I want to kind of like soften these words with my overall view being that there's still a reason to use these tools. And I don't think it's the end of the world for kids. So it freaks me out for sure. And I think that we need to like really fight the consequences of how we use this stuff. But I don't think that I don't think it's all bad. Like, I don't think it's going to completely disrupt the humanity's progress and make everyone like an isolated, sitting in their room, like Wally,
like Wally,
on their
exactly.
chairs.
That's where my mind goes.
I don't think that we're like 100% headed there. But yeah, I mean, if you're growing up and that's what you're valuing, it just changes your whole worldview, right? Like just the design decisions that social media platforms have made subconsciously communicate things to their users, right? Snapchat has the streaks feature. And what that implicitly says is the quality of your relationships is best measured by how frequently you're communicating with someone, right? Not actually what you're saying. Like, you get a point added to your Snapchat streak, regardless of what you're sending. And kids really, they look at that, and that's how they measure their friendships now. So I just think we need to be really cognizant of, like, what is, just on a design perspective, what is Snapchat, what is Instagram, what is Facebook saying to their users? And is that in line with what we want the next generation to grow up believing?
Yeah, right. Like, okay, Facebook's telling me I'm a POS sheep follower that can be swayed in any which way based on a post I read that day. And yeah, wow, what does that say about me in general, in life, in all other facets, right? Whereas if I can change my paradigm and go, how can I use the platform as opposed to it use me? Even if you may just be thinking that's what you're doing, is at least a proactive step, right? It's a proactive way to be conscious, at least, of what is being absorbed, how you're using it, and the impact it may have on you, so you can kind of course correct, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Boyson.
Brandon, what's happening, man?
Mate, I'll tell you, little one, my daughter, she is becoming more and more her, which is amazing. I'm just eating it up. But when I don't want to eat it up is in the middle of the night, 4 a.m, when she's trying to skip naps and I've got a lot of things to do. That's when things get a little tough.
So what are you leaning on? I mean, yeah, right. I get that. How much coffee are you drinking these days?
Well, mate, you know me. I'm certainly not. I don't like the vices. You know, you've been in the health space for a while, and I get a little bit too hooked on those things. So I'm pretty grateful that we had the folks at Magic Mind reach out to provide us and the audience some value with their Magic Mind drink solution. And dude, I can tell you, it is blowing my mind.
What's it doing for you? I'll talk about mine, but what's it doing for you?
Well, mate, I think the biggest thing is sustained energy. That's what I need. I need to have the same energy at 10 a.m. as I do need at 2 p.m. But when the energy dips and I've still got work to do and she's crawling all over me, screaming in my ear, that is when I need to be able to push through. And yeah, so I'm not getting the dips. And unlike coffee, I'm sleeping at night, which is amazing.
Yes, the ingredient thing. So that's me too. I've been a coffee dude for a very long time. And when I get into these spaces where I'm just working, and I get too much into the coffee, I end up like frazzled and stomach achy and jittery. And what I'm seeing with Magic Mind is like, I've reduced the amount of coffee I'm actually drinking in the morning, and Magic Mind boosts the focus for me. So for me, it's like, how many things can I juggle in a day? And having that focus without the coffee stuff, without all the coffee downside, I think has been really good for me. And yes, the sleep thing, man, there's some ingredients in this stuff that have totally helped my sleep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I mean, because you're getting the caffeine from matcha, which is an extended release caffeine as opposed to like an intense rise then dip. It's got all the fancy mushrooms that, you know, everyone's taking these days, including ashwagandha, which gives you that más fuerte kind of energy. And and fortunately for us, they've offered us a great discount that us and you, the listeners, have access to get 56% off your first subscription and 20% off a one-time purchase with the unique discount code MANKIND. So if you go to magicmind.com/mankind, you get access to this discount. And like us, you get to enjoy this sustained energy, that más fuerte energy. I can take that into a couple places, but yeah, big fans.
And yes, check it out. Yes.
Yeah, and I need to get my wife to stop stealing mine, which would be great.
Thanks, Brandon.
Oh, the fact that conversations like this are even happening, I think, is a really important piece. Dialogue, right? You're encouraging dialogue. When you go into a school or a cohort and you bring them into Project Reboot, what you, in essence, are doing are opening a dialogue and giving them a chance to share their stories of how it's impacted them, how it knocks onto the goals they have in their life. And I really love that metric of like, well, how valuable is your time?
Yeah.
In your TED talk, you use a really great visual, which is like a bunch of little dots on the screen that represent, was it months?
Yeah, it's an 18-year-old's remaining life in months, assuming a 90-year life expectancy.
Assuming, which is very likely, right, for us. And then you go, okay, here's how much work takes up. Here's how much sleeping takes up. Here's how much using the toilet sleeps up. And then you go, here's how much social media fills up. And then all of a sudden, there's only like 15% left on the screen to experience the world, to build those deeper relationships, to, you know, go explore, to try new things and new endeavors. And it really puts into perspective how finite life can be and where we're putting our time. So for anyone listening, the TED Talk will be linked. My encouragement is, after listening to this, you go and check it out, because it really is good. I want to bring in AI, because everything's about AI right now.
Yeah, for sure.
So Sapiens, great book by Yuval Noah Harari. Great book for everyone to check out. It gives us a bit of an insight as to where we've come from. And it's a very kind of anthropological look at how humans tick and what got us to this place. And so he recently was quoted saying, "What kind of relationships will there be when computers and objects understand you better than the people in your life?"
Yeah.
So you have a very, you have an ability to snapshot kind of the world through people's use through smartphones in a fantastic way. But now you throw in something, this beast that is coming, that is here, that is AI. Yeah. How do you feel like AI is contributing or could contribute to the current issues or the betterment of what we got going on? Because there are even things like, you can have an AI girlfriend now that can like, that can talk to you, and like you can go on virtual dates with, and that just blows my mind. But that aside, AI, good thing, bad thing, not sure.
I think there's no black and white answer to that. I think if completely unregulated, it could be terrible. Because right now, I would argue that Facebook and TikTok's algorithms, they already understand you to a certain extent better than you understand yourself, right? The rate at which TikTok can learn what content grabs your attention, stuff that you wouldn't even know you'd be interested in, it will find the stuff that captivates you and pulls you into this rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
The data that they're using to figure that out is, all things considered, not that great of data, right? They're looking at how long are you looking at each video? Are you liking it? Are you sending it to other people? Like, that's a pretty limited set of information. Yes, you can learn a lot from it. And when you have so much of that data, it can be pretty accurate. But what I'm concerned about is this combination of AI and VR, because these new VR headsets, they're doing eye tracking, right? They look at the musculature in your face, like Apple's new Vision Pro. You can FaceTime and it creates this avatar of you that mimics, you know, what facial expressions you're actually making, because it's picking up on all that. That's, you know, it's cool. It's a good application of technology, but that could go completely off the rails, because the musculature in our face communicates what we're thinking subconsciously, right? Paul Ekman, he's this scientist his work was dissected in Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, which is a really good book. He basically mapped all of the different muscular contractions in the face. There are 43 individual contractions, and when you combine them in different ways, you get basically the emotional responses of the face. And when you train yourself to see exactly what contractions are happening, you can almost, to a certain extent, become like a mind reader. So he developed this whole practice that people use in lie detection. There's another scientist, I can't remember his name, but he's able to predict divorce with a 93% accuracy. So he'll have couples come in.
That's Dr. John and Julie Gottman.
Yes, that's correct.
Up in
so
Seattle.
He uses Paul Ekman's practice of facial encoding as part of his model for predicting whether or not couples will stay together. So the point is, there's so much information about what is happening inside your brain just on your face. And you could imagine a world where now we're engaging with social media feeds and content through these headsets, and they have access to that data subconsciously, how we're reacting to things. their ability to understand what content influences us would go through the roof. And you think about what that would mean for like political persuasion, for instance, and you combine that with deep fakes, and you're very quickly like imagining a dystopian future. So that's like a terrifying potential outcome of AI just enhancing the way that the algorithms that social media feeds are using understand the way we respond to things. There are also a lot of great potential applications. And if we give it the right goals, I think it can help us resolve a lot of the problems that social media has created. But it all comes down to like, what are the underlying incentives and what are we getting AI to optimize for? So I hope that we learn from the lessons of social media and make this next round of technologies be a net positive and influence us with the right goals in mind. Because if we don't, I think the consequences could be pretty dire.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about the book, The Rational Optimist, before we got on, and I'm of the belief that human beings at their core, as much as it's easy to believe that there's this like group of old white dudes that are pulling the strings of the entire planet, like whether that's even the case or not, I don't even want to go there. I don't even know anything about any of that. Yet that seems to be such a common belief. Humans at their core, I believe there are more people working for the positive. There are more people in STEM that are truly trying to advance us and fix some of the challenges and the problems that we have. I mean, you, case in point, what the work you're doing at the age of 24, and you are right in the center of where people are being impacted in their lives by this stuff. So more advocates for change is what's going to, in my mind, going to change things. So kudos to you, man. Thank you for doing what you do. Tinfoil hat, though, I need to put it on for a second. I was feeding my daughter the other day, and I was talking to her in the very little bit of Spanish that I have. And so that was kind of my game for the day. How much Spanish can I speak to her? I'm getting ads now in Spanish, like on my phone, on YouTube,
really?
on my Echo, my Amazon Echo. I'm getting ads in Spanish. So for what? Either my pronunciation is fantastic, but there's something going on here. There's something going on with like all of a sudden that's happening. So yeah, that starts to make me think of the devices around me and what they're actually absorbing. And are they taking in all that facial recognition stuff? I don't know. Anyhow, tinfoil hat off now. Tell us about, you told me a really cool story about when you were traveling abroad and how technology is impacting second, third world nations. This isn't just a Western issue, is it?
No, not at all. I think actually it's going to have a bigger impact on the developing world. So yeah, I was out in Nepal in March, and good application of social media. I reached out to a bunch of high schools in Kathmandu on Facebook Messenger, and a few of them got back to me and had me come in and speak to their students. So I was able to talk to probably about 150, 200 Nepalese middle school and high school students about their use of social media. And they're all on it, like for the most part. And it's really, the culture around it is very different over there. They haven't watched The Social Dilemma. Like there's not really a conversation going on around the negative impacts of this stuff and the consequences of using it.
Sure.
Their screen time isn't quite as high as the average in the States, but there are definitely kids that are spending 5 to 6 hours a day, primarily on Facebook and TikTok. And it's a whole different set of challenges because it's introducing them to Western culture through the lens of, through the lens of a TikTok feed. And it's the stuff that it's promoting to them, I don't think are the things that we want to promote. So the most, I think, striking example of this was when I got asked what my thoughts were about Andrew Tate. And it was clear that there were multiple students that were fans of Andrew Tate in that classroom in Nepal. And you think Nepal, you think Buddhism, mindfulness. I mean, you would think that their culture would go directly against all of the things that Andrew Tate advocates for. But, you know, if you're seeing Andrew Tate video after Andrew Tate video, and like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you get kind of sucked into that world. So I don't know, that was just a very striking aha moment for me that these tools are influencing us on a global scale, and in these developing countries where this is their way of interacting with the internet for the, you know, in the majority, it's going to start changing culture. And I think the direction that it could push it is potentially negative. It's also, in the same breath, like, it's such a big opportunity and set of tools for them. So another really interesting story from my time out in Nepal is I got driven to the school that I talked at by this Nepalese, I think he was like 24 or 25. He barely spoke English. Like, he had a couple of kind of words and phrases. And through our conversation, I was able to pick up that he was working at the school because he wanted to learn English. So he just hoped that by being around students that were speaking English, classes that were being taught in English, he would kind of pick it up to the extent that he could get somewhat fluent. And then his goal was to move to Australia, get a higher paying job, and send money back to his family. And he had a phone, and I was like, do you know about Duolingo? And he's like, no, you know, what is that? And he didn't know that you could learn English through this device, right? There are apps that you can use to do that. And he just wasn't told, like, the benefits of this tool that was in his pocket. Like, there needs to be education on the positive uses of them as well. Yeah, it just, that whole experience really clarified for me that I've been looking at this through the lens of the West, specifically like the Bay Area, right? And we have our set of problems here, but there's a much broader set of problems, and there's more education needed worldwide, particularly in developing countries. So it's a daunting challenge, but I think we need to really start focusing on addressing this on a global scale, and not just getting sucked into focusing on, you know, people in the US or any other Western country.
I think a perspective shift that I'm trying to employ right now for me is that, you know, probably our generation in the 80s, or maybe someone older, was saying that television is rotting kids' brains, and it's having them wanting to buy the latest pair of sneakers or do their hair a certain way and whatever. All the while, those TV shows were making it over into the Soviet Union. They were making it to the other side of the Berlin Wall. And one of the big things that that brought the wall down, a lot of people attribute it to many factors, including, you know, Reagan's relationship with Gorbachev. Pop culture had a humongous impact on a lot of people wanting to get out of the status quo in which they were existing. They wanted to get away from communism because they saw this opportunity in America and around the rest of the world. And they saw that there were so many other things that just got them excited, that really spoke to them. And so, there could be a lot of positive messages coming across these platforms that are, you know, teaching kids English, right? How many people have you met who have English as a second language? And they'll tell you that the Kardashians taught them English, as horrible as that sounds to say. But they learned English, you know, watching shows like that. A better example could be like The Amazing Race or Survivor. But, you know, there are really positive opportunities here. I think the lesson for me, though, especially as it pertains to how people are receiving information in social media, is when there's an absence of positive male role models, and I'll happily throw you into that category. When there's an absence of, not that you're absent, sorry, that you're there. You are a positive male. Yes, thank you. When there aren't those like you who are out there sharing a positive message, inviting people into a different way of thinking, a positive, constructive way of looking at their life and how they're impacted by many external influences. When there's an absence of those men, and let's just say people in general, irresponsible people will fill the space. They will fill the gap. And I will put Andrew Tate in there, and I will put a couple other people in there, that those who do not have a constructive message, those who do not have goodwill to share and put out into the world, they will fill in the spaces when there aren't people like yourself going out and sharing these things that need to be shared and inviting people into dialogue to have these conversations. So, mate, true kudos to you and what you're doing. This is truly powerful. I want to ask you, just before we wrap up, how do you, I mean, you've made it very clear, and I think what helps me relate to you and what you're sharing is that you yourself go, yeah, like I'm impacted by social media too. Like the doom scrolling, all the rest. You're like, it's human to get stuck into these kind of addictions in these apps. What do you do? Give us a look into kind of your life and how you catch yourself going, okay, I'm getting caught. I'm ending up in this kind of feedback loop. Then what actions do you implement?
Yeah. So I am still not perfect. Like, it's not like you can just have this recognition of, oh, like social media is impacting me negatively. I'm just going to like now have a perfect intentional relationship with it. It takes continued work. And my general like framework for how you build a healthier relationship with technology is there's 4 steps. The first is to reboot. And that's doing some form of a digital detox. Ideally, that is getting completely offline and immersed in nature. So for me, nothing gets me out of a slump better than going on a backpacking trip. And if I can get the opportunity to go just like, I'm in the Bay Area, so trek out in Point Reyes or in Big Sur or in Tahoe. I need to do that periodically to not be so overstimulated, right? There's a lot of clarity that comes from having hours on end just completely alone with your thoughts and immersed in nature. So that's really for me like the starting point. And then there's 3 more steps. There's rethink. So really clarify, again, how do I want to use this? How do I get a good deal out of social media? What kind of content do I want to be consuming? Redesign, which is honestly probably the easiest step that will have the most value. Just there's a lot that you can do to make your environment more supportive of those intentions that you've set. So the changes there are changes to your physical environment, main one being move your phone charger to a different room so that you're not on your phone as you're falling asleep or first thing in the morning. You can also keep your phone in a different room while working. There's a study that shows that you're actually measurably less intelligent and attentive when your phone is like on the desk right next to you as you're trying to work on a laptop. So that's a super easy win. There's also social environment changes. So I think, again, just having conversations with the people in your life, recognizing that there may be some social pressure to spend time on social media. If you're in a group chat with your friends that's constantly going on Instagram, you're all communicating with each other at the entry point into a rabbit hole. So one thing I always talk to kids about is like move your group chats to communication apps. Don't have them on social media. Is not even really social media anymore. It's an entertainment platform that has
it's anti-social media.
Exactly. So yeah, I think one, trying to eliminate social pressure by addressing ways that your friends might be driving you to spend more time on these apps, but then also creating some level of social accountability, having a, whether it's a family member or a friend that you talk to about, I'm spending too much time on my phone. This is where I want my screen time to get to. I'm going to share my screen time reports with you, and maybe you can do it with me, and we can hold each other in check and kind of keep each other accountable. That's a really awesome change to make. And then the big environment change piece is just reconfiguring your devices to make them less addicting and distracting. There's a lot you can do here. Generally, it falls into a few categories. The main one being adding friction to getting on and staying on social media. So the best app that I have to recommend by far is this app called ClearSpace. It forces you to take a 15-second pause before you get onto a distracting app. And what that does is it prevents you from using that app as an escape from discomfort, because it forces you to sit alone with your thoughts, which is uncomfortable. And you'll identify, oh, I'm just running from boredom or stress or whatever. And then you can find a healthier redirect for that uncomfortable emotion. It also asks you how long you want to spend on the app. So you can say, I'm going to do a 5-minute Instagram session, and it will kick you off the app after those 5 minutes. You'd have to go through another 15-second delay. So that tool is just, it's amazing how well it works. So ClearSpace, definitely install that, get it set up, go through your notifications. Your phone should never interrupt your day unless it's urgent. Batch your non-urgent notifications into scheduled summaries that come 2-3 times per day, where you can just go through all your, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever, that you don't need to be notified of in the moment. And then really the last step is retrain, right? So we've got reboot, rethink, redesign, and retrain. And what this boils down to is addressing the underlying issues that lead to unhealthy tech use, because it's really just a manifestation of being distractible, right? And by cultivating traits like resilience and discipline and mindfulness and productivity, we can become the kind of people that have healthier relationships with technology, because we're less prone to distraction and we have healthier coping skills. And that all comes down to just changing your habits, right? And that's the hard work. That's what takes a long time. And it's something I'm still working on, doing things like meditating, journaling, spending time alone with your thoughts, going on walks without a podcast, or, except for this podcast, but other than that, having time just where you're alone, reflecting. I honestly think focusing on learning how to work smarter and be more productive is a huge thing, especially for students, because so much of their tech use stems from academic stress. So figuring out ways to be a more productive and effective student is going to minimize the amount of academic stress that you have to run away from by turning to your phone. And then, obviously just doing things like staying healthy, moving your body, sleeping well, all of that stuff is going to help you be more resistant to the never-ending amount of digital distraction that we always have available to us.
Well, mate, you just delivered just so much value in the past couple of minutes, just sharing all these different strategies. And for those listening, right, that may feel like the elephant. You have to do all these things at once to create the change. And it's simply not true. Let me be a testimonial to you, Dino. I just from hearing you talk and checking you out and looking through all your resources. So I've put my apps, my social media apps, to where I have to go through a lot of work to find them. Now I know about ClearSpace. I'll just go ahead and add that. I don't get social media notifications anymore, just at all. I have to go into the app so first find the app, then go in to see the notifications, which has been really helpful. And spending time outside without my phone, no audiobook, no podcast. These are all tips that I've been able to apply. My wife and I put our smartwatch and, the phone and everything in the bathroom, which is great. So that's probably had something to do with us sleeping a bit deeper recently. So mate, just those tips alone from just doing research for this interview have impacted my life, my wife's life in a positive way. But for those that really want to be intentional about changing their habits, can you tell us a little bit about your online course and Project Reboot and how they can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the past, year, my focus has really been going in and delivering these in-person speaking engagements. And I'm now kind of turning the page and trying to deliver more value online. So I'm going to be running basically just a virtual version of the program that I run in schools. Within the next couple of months, the date is still TBA, but you can sign up for the waitlist for that by going to my website, which is projectreboot.school. And then there's an online course page under the services. It will likely be co-hosted by Dr. Sahar Yusuf and Professor Lucas Miller, who are those neuroscientists from Berkeley that have that class on productivity. They have such a deep amount of knowledge on neuroscience and the impact of digital distraction and what we can do to combat it. So they're a really valuable resource. But I really encourage you to go join that waitlist, and I'll be starting to put out some YouTube content and condensing the material that I give in my talks into 5 to 10 minute videos that I'll be putting out online and sharing. So stay tuned for that as well. The YouTube channel isn't up and running yet, but that's my next big project along with the online course.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're gonna have all the links to the aforementioned in the show notes, including the ClearSpace app, Project Reboot, how to get on the waiting list. I myself am going to jump on that waiting list because I think this is something that I'm very aware how my daughter is witnessing my behaviors on my phone. And it makes it more real, man. It makes it more real when you've got a little one just absorbing everything you do and wanting to do it. I don't know how she started picking her nose. That had nothing to do with me. I swear, that had nothing to do with me.
Sure.
Mate, I'm a big fan. I'm going to be following your work going onwards. I hope this isn't the last time we get to have you on the show. In fact, when the time comes that you're launching this course, let's get you back on and we'll make sure to promote it out to those of listening. Again, links to everything mentioned in this podcast will be in the show notes. Mate, big thank you to you. Final question, magic wand question. Hold out your hand. I'm going to give you a magic wand here.
There it is.
There you go. It's yours. It's in your hand. So with this magic wand, when you wave it, you get to enact your mission for this phase of your life, knowing that, mate, you're 24. You're going to do a lot in your life. But right now with Project Reboot, its mission is achieved. What does the world look like once you achieve that mission?
Wow, that's a big question. My hope is that it would impact how particularly teenagers, how they think, how they feel, and what they believe. Like, I think those are really the three biggest consequences of unintentional screen time. So I think that it would be a world where we recognize the potential of the tools at our fingertips. We use the internet to cultivate new skills and passions and learn interesting things and stay informed and build better worldviews. I think that our attention spans would be better. We'd spend more time present with each other, more time outside in nature. I think we'd be able to have better conversations. One big, set of consequences is obviously politically what happens when everyone has this personalized view of what's going on in the world. So
yes,
I think that's a big set of challenges to address as well.
Yeah.
But I would hope that it would really just be a world where we harness the benefits of technology while minimizing its consequences. And I think that it has so much potential to make us better and more powerful versions of ourselves. There's just some kind of malware there that we need to to cut out before we can really effectively recognize that reality. So yeah, that's a big question. I think there would be a lot of positive impacts if the mission is successful. I want to be realistic, and I don't think it's something that can just like you snap your fingers and by me giving this hour-long talk at a school, it's immediately permanently changed everyone's tech use for the better. Like I still need to learn more about how to really make this like lasting, meaningful change for as many people as possible. But yeah, my hope is that at the end of the road, it results in people just being more intentional and leveraging technology better.
Well, like you said previously, what you're doing is you're planting and you're not pruning. All right, you're planting seeds. So beautiful, mate. Thank you for all that you do, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your host, Boyson Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. That is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.